The lights at Gate 7C dim, terminals freeze, and alarms erupt across the globe. One name triggers a $3 billion lockdown as the guard turns pale, clutching his report. But what happened next will stun even the most seasoned. But first, let's go back to the beginning. Margaret Dawson's steps were slow, not because of frailty, but out of sheer calculation, a rhythm practiced by those who understand that hurrying rarely earns you kindness in public places. Her left ankle throbbed in quiet protest, stiff from standing for too long at the podium during her final talk. The crowd in San Diego had applauded her closing remarks on education equity for underserved children, with the same reverence they used for heads of state. But that world felt distant now, shrinking behind the noise of suitcase wheels and boarding announcements. She approached the gate with a patient smile, the kind that came naturally to a woman who had spent decades helping troubled students navigate their futures. Her voice, though softened by age, carried its old clarity as she addressed the young woman scanning tickets. "Excuse me, dear, may I board early? My doctor said—" But the sentence was amputated by a sudden, sharp interjection. "Ma'am, the gate's not open to everyone yet. You need to step back." The tone wasn't just firm. It was antagonistic, an accusation dressed as procedure. Margaret looked up and saw him, tall, square-jawed, and wearing a scowl that wasn't earned that morning but likely carried over from many. Paul Granger, the type who mistook his badge for a shield and his uniform for permission. The contrast between their energies was jarring. Margaret, all worn patience and gentle humility, and Paul, radiating unchecked authority. She held out her boarding pass with the quiet confidence of someone who didn't need to prove herself. I have mobility assistance on my ticket," she said. He leaned forward with a smirk that didn't bother hiding its disdain. "You're not disabled, and don't try to pull rank with that attitude." His voice rose slightly, ensuring others nearby could catch the performance. "We get people like this all the time, entitled and bored. Go sit down." The words hit the floor with a thud. The terminal, moments ago humming with casual airport energy, seemed to pause. Travelers glanced up. A toddler clutched tighter to his mother's coat. A businessman lowered his coffee mid-sip. It was not just the words, it was how easily he had said them, how comfortably he had chosen to humiliate a woman who could be anyone's grandmother. Margaret did not argue. That wasn't her way. But inside, something shifted, a subtle internal reorganization. She turned, as instructed, and sat down slowly, favoring her ankle. Her hand moved to her purse, unzipping the weathered leather pouch with unshaken calm. From within, she drew her phone, not out of panic or protest, but with the deliberate grace of someone who understood power was best exercised without spectacle. The terminal buzzed with the muted chaos of pre-boarding routine, clicking heels, coffee cups clinking, hushed arguments about seat assignments. But around Margaret Dawson, a strange quiet settled. It wasn't imposed from outside. It emanated from her. As if her presence, still and composed amid the motion, exuded a gravitational force that cleared space without effort. She sat upright, spine straight, knees together, the way she'd sat during faculty hearings and contentious board meetings. Her breath was slow, her gaze still. No anger showed on her face, not even offense, just precision. A focus sharpened by decades of being underestimated and decades more of knowing precisely when that underestimation could be used as leverage. She reached into the side compartment of her handbag and withdrew a phone. Not sleek or ostentatious, but elegant, matte black. The kind that gave nothing away at first glance. Her fingers, knotted with age but firm with purpose, moved through her contacts with the familiarity of someone who rarely had to scroll. The name sat near the top. T. She tapped it once. It rang once. Hello? The voice on the other end was male, clipped, alert. Midwestern vowels trained by Ivy League diction. "Tanner," she said, voice low and clear. "I need you to initiate Freeze Protocol S on Northwest Alliance Airlines. Now." There was silence, the kind of silence where corporate wars begin. Margaret could hear Tanner's breath catch, followed by the soft tap of keys or switches. He was already moving, already preparing, but protocol demanded confirmation. "Are you sure?" His voice, usually steel, was lined with hesitation. They'd run drills, they'd imagined scenarios, but to actually trigger it? She didn't blink. "He just humiliated me, in public, without provocation, and he works for them." Her words fell with the weight of verdicts. Margaret didn't yell. She never had. She simply gave facts. Cool, precise, irrefutable. And in her world, facts moved billions. Understood. She ended the call without a farewell. The decision had been made. The machinery would now activate. Quietly, globally, relentlessly. She placed the phone down on her lap, retrieved her iPad from the same bag, and unlocked the screen. With the same calm she'd used to dismantle institutional bias in education policy, Margaret resumed reading an article about Arctic terns and their 44,000-mile annual migration. Her heartbeat never changed pace. There was no need to look up. The rebalancing had already begun. At 7:42 p.m., just as boarding announcements were scheduled to begin, the first crack in the illusion of control appeared. Small, nearly imperceptible. The terminal lights above Gate 7C dimmed for 2 seconds, then snapped back to full brightness. Most passengers barely noticed, but those behind the counter did. And their instincts, refined by years of managing chaos disguised as routine, stirred like birds before a storm. "We've got a systems lag," murmured one agent into her headset, frowning as her boarding scanner froze mid-swipe. Another tapped the screen of her company-issued tablet, once, twice, until it locked completely, displaying only a looping spinner where a passenger list should have been. Then a ping, a silent one. A push notification meant only for supervisors and risk personnel. Temporary hold. Finance back-end systems. Reauthorization required. At first, the phrasing seemed bureaucratic, harmless. But when payment terminals shut down, and every attempt to issue a boarding pass returned processing error, account verification failed, panic began to bloom. "Can someone please tell me why I can't process upgrades?" A gate agent hissed into her earpiece, her voice cracking. She glanced up and saw an elderly woman seated calmly in the row closest to the counter, reading her iPad as if nothing were wrong. A continent away in Seattle, inside the glass and steel headquarters of Northwest Alliance Airlines, red strobes pulsed across internal dashboards like the early signs of cardiac arrest. Conference room monitors blinked in and out of emergency protocols. IT specialists swarmed the main control floor. Legal teams spilled coffee while scrambling toward compliance terminals. Their screens bore the same bold, unforgiving line of text. Asset movement frozen, pending internal ethics review. Request Referendum Dawson. No one had clearance to override it. The CFO's phone buzzed 5 times in 1 minute. The director of risk management burst into the boardroom, face ashen. "Torchlight Holdings. It's a direct freeze, Category S." Every executive present stopped breathing for a beat. Torchlight was not a regulatory body. It was not a government entity. It was something far worse, a private global compliance infrastructure built by the kind of minds who understood not just how money worked, but how to arrest it. And Margaret Dawson wasn't just a name on a legal document. She was a founding architect, one of the original quiet titans of institutional banking leverage. While most forgot her face, they never forgot her signature. By 8:10 p.m., Her name wasn't just on the lips of lawyers and analysts. It was glowing across every screen in the airline's corporate risk command center, tagged in flashing red as an active threat vector. From Tokyo to Toronto, department heads asked the same question in rising panic. Who the hell is M. Dawson? The answer, they'd soon realize, wasn't just inconvenient. It was catastrophic. The air around Gate 7C was no longer filled with announcements or the impatient rustling of boarding passes. It was the kind of silence that precedes a verdict. Even the background hum of airport machinery seemed to hold its breath. Paul Granger stood like a statue, sweating beneath the crisp lines of his uniform, his fists clenched around a half-folded incident report. The paper trembled in his hand, stained with the pressure of a pen that had tried to rewrite the narrative, to frame arrogance as protocol, disrespect as discipline. But no words on that page could soften the truth now. Across the room, Margaret Dawson rose. She did not rise like someone avenging herself. She rose like someone remembering her own height, her own weight, her own place in the world. There was stiffness in her joints, yes, but no hesitation. Each step she took forward reclaimed something that had been momentarily stripped away in front of strangers. Then came the blur of motion. Greg Whitmore, Regional Director for Customer Affairs, LAX. His face was crimson, sweat pooling at his collar. They had put him on the first charter they could scramble, and he arrived not with solutions, but with apologies. Raw, panicked, desperate. Dr. Dawson, he stammered, nearly tripping over his own breath. We are profoundly sorry. Mr. Granger is no longer with us. His badge has been deactivated. We've arranged a private aircraft waiting on the tarmac. Any destination you wish. Will, please, let us fix this. Margaret paused. Her eyes were clear and unreadable. She regarded him not with disdain, but with the unnerving quiet of someone who saw through desperation's sheen. She had no interest in vengeance, just in truth. I don't need a jet, she said, each syllable sharp as a scalpel. I needed decency. It landed like a gavel. The director stood speechless, reduced in front of his staff and the onlooking crowd to a symbol of an institution that had failed its simplest test: kindness. A small girl near the window, still holding her mother's hand, gazed at Margaret with wide, wondering eyes. Margaret's face softened, just a flicker, and she gave the child a subtle wink, passing down something stronger than revenge, dignity reclaimed. Then she turned and walked toward the gate, and row by row, every single traveler rose to their feet. Some clapped slowly, others with fervor, but they all stood. Not for her wealth, not for her power, but for her restraint, her clarity, her justice. As Margaret Dawson crossed the threshold to board her flight, the gesture felt ceremonial. A quiet coronation. And in the long, bruised history of corporate arrogance, no apology had ever felt so insufficient.